Hi everyone, welcome back to this comeback episode of Usap Tayo, Mag Kwento Tayo, series of mental health edition for kasamahan ko. I'm really excited to bring back this episode because there is just so much need of a safe space and open space for conversations within our kasamas within the diaspora. With here today, I have three amazing individuals from different places of the United States. Um, and they'll be sharing um, their name, preferred pronouns that they have, a food that describes their personality, and where they're joining in from.
Okay, my name's Tony. I'm in Hawaii. I work in IT, and food that would describe me is crispy bacon. Not because not because I share any characteristics with it, but because I am hungry. And when you mentioned food, the first thing I thought it was bacon and rice. So actually, I'll change my answer to rice.
Hi, my name's Drea. I am from Las Vegas, and the first thing that came to my mind were tacos, just because I love spicy food, but they're very simple and you can have them in a million different ways.
Fun. My name is Ashley or Ashley Marie. I'm currently based in San Francisco, and for some reason, the first food that came to mind was bamboo supi. I think it's because that's what I've been craving recently. But I like to think of it as something that's quick and on the go, and I feel like I'm always quick and on the go. And even when it feels like it might slow you down because that's some hefty rice and some spam, I feel like it's easy. It'll give you energy. So
Oh, everyone has diverse amount of foods and it's making me all hungry. Um, but last but not least, hi again. My name is Chachi and I'm really honored to bring this back and to share this with everyone. Um, I go by the pronouns she and her. The food that best describes me would be sushi because it's really like authentic in how you kind of put it together, but it makes it work. The first question that I would like to ask everyone, and I know we got a little comfortable because off camera we did a little breakout session as kind of a speed dating challenge to get to know a little bit everyone. The first question that I would like to ask is, how did your mental health journey start, and why is it important to you now?
I think for me, it started when I was 15, because that's when I moved to Hawaii from the Philippines. I'm 27 now. And I think that was the first time when I felt like really just really sad because leaving all friends and family, coming to Hawaii, and it's pretty much just my immediate family. And I think over time the sadness evolved into just angst and I think every adolescent goes through it. I think I can say that uh being aware and becoming aware of my feelings and trying to understand them and see where they actually come from. It helps me uh, appreciate life and my situation more. Because I think it's just easy to complain and be sad and just not want to do anything. And that's my favorite thing to do. But when you just sit back and maybe talk it through or journal or just whatever lens you have to examine yourself. I think you should take it because then you'll understand yourself better and you'll know why you're feeling sad. You'll know how to prevent yourself from being sad. Or you'll know how to identify that you are sad in the first place because maybe you don't even know. And I think the biggest part of to me about mental health is identifying and understanding when you have a problem. Because then once you know what the problem is, you'll be able to slowly work your way out of it or figure it out and then not be as sad. Yeah, and it's a everyday thing, of course. Sure, everyone has their good days and bad days, so it's just be aware that, or I just have to be aware that it's not like a permanent solution. It's something that mental health is something you have to constantly be cognizant of, be aware of, and work on.
I'm gonna try to make this a short story. I also want to give a little trigger warning about it, but I feel like my whole journey with mental health, I was kind of forced into a little bit. Because when I was 17, this was in like 2010, I had never even heard the term mental health. I had never heard of depression. I had never heard any of these things before. And I was just all of a sudden, I had no appetite. I had no will or energy to do anything. And I just kept seeing doctor after doctor, thinking something was like physically wrong with me. And nobody could tell me what was wrong with me. Like, not even any of the doctors had suggested it might be a mental issue. And then I did attempt to take my own life. And it wasn't until that happened that I was made to go to an inpatient care. And then that's when they diagnosed me with clinical depression. And that was the first time I ever heard of that. And so, like, now seeing that it's so much more talked about and seeing all the information and knowledge that I have now, it just makes me realize like how much I probably could have prevented back then. And so it used to be something that I was really embarrassed and ashamed to talk about. But if I could help other people avoid things that I went through, it's made me want to talk about it more.
I think my journey with mental health is similar to Drea's in that like I didn't really hear about mental health up until like maybe I was in middle school. But I had first heard about it actually through social media. It was on Tumblr. Those were my Tumblr days. And if you remember OG Tumblr, like in 2011, 2012, like there were like a bunch of quotes going around about how people feel depressed and how people feel anxious. And I think that was the first time I started to form my understanding around mental health. And I don't think I started actually struggling with my mental health even more until high school, because I couldn't find a space to safely discuss like what was going on. And I say safely because I think at the time, like there was still very much a lot of stigma around mental health, and to this day even. But like what Dre was saying, like it's still being talked about more than it was before. Um, and I think the harmful place that I found myself in was that mental health wasn't valid unless you were experiencing it in extremity. So when I was experiencing it in those little increments, it just wasn't enough to be considered mental health, maybe, is how I conceived it. And then it wasn't until college that I actually learned that mental health didn't have to like live on the spectrum of like have to be really bad in order for it to get the attention that it deserves, for me to take care of myself. And so I think the reason why it still sticks and is important to me to this day is that it's always changing. Like my definition of what mental health is and how I see it play out in my life is still changing. And I think most recently it's understanding that a lot of our definition with mental health, though it has evolved, is still informed by a lot of like Western ideals, and understanding how to incorporate that with my Filipino identity has been, I think, my point of why it's so important.
Everyone brought up really great points, and I just want to appreciate everyone for sharing like their personal story at least. Going because I was taking notes when each of you guys were talking, and I didn't want to interrupt, like wanted to go next, but kind of starting. I'll start from like from Tony to Drea to Ashley. But for Tony, like what you said about like how mental health is not just one way or another, but it is something that we're constantly experiencing every single day. And I think that's really where we come in as like as we share our own experience and stories. And with Drea, with transitioning to Drea of like you not being able to hear about mental health until you physically yourself have to go through it, because there was no kind of definition to describe what is mental health growing up. And kind of what leads into what Ashley said is just like, um, mental health before was kind of seen as like, if you're not going through it physically, then it's not happening to you. But subtly, it does exist. And I think, I guess something that I wanted to bring up and may kind of like define it a little bit clearer is, what was or how did you kind of or what is your definition of mental health in your kind of like, in like your own definition without layman's terms?
Well, I know for me, I feel like there is this kind of this this thought that mental health and like taking care of your mental health means that you always have to be happy and you always have to be in a good mood. And that's not at all what I think it is. I think it's more so of like recognizing your own emotions and accepting them and knowing how to deal with them.
That's a really great way to bring it. Is like what you see on social media sometimes, just like everyone is always posting like their happy side, but no one posts their bad moments. Like it's always the greater moments, and it's where we kind of compare ourselves of like, oh, how come I'm not where everyone is?
Mm-hmm. And then I feel like you do see people nowadays posting their down moments and then people will just hate on that too. So there's really no win in that situation.
And then I feel like the people that do get hate on it, part of the hate they're saying, oh, you just want attention. When in reality, it's like, oh, they do want attention, but I don't know. It's difficult, I guess.
Yeah,
A
that's true.
weird thing.
Sometimes when
It's
you're feeling
complicated.
down, you just want someone to reach out.
Mm.
It is that it's like being able to share your own vulnerability can actually be the guiding point to someone who may be struggling silently because they didn't hear anyone like, what do I do, or like kind of like this blind spot moment.
Yeah, sometimes you don't really know what you're looking for until you see it. You know?
I guess that's really life.
Yeah.
And then Ashley, I did you have anything to add?
Oh, girl, you really got me thinking. What is mental health even? I'd be saying that word and I don't know what I'm talking about.
Thinking of it like an engine, I guess. Just have to maintain it, make sure the oil is checked. I don't know how to check oil IRL, but the metaphor is there.
That is a really good point. Maintenance. Because
Mm.
I feel like I've had people to ask me of like, oh, how are you so happy all the time? Or how have you changed so much? And I'm like, it's not like everything. I mean, yeah, a lot has changed, but it's not like
Mhm.
I'm just magically better and everything has shifted, like there's still things I have to do constantly to make sure that I take care of myself.
I do I like the one I like that you brought up about how when other people say like, "Oh, you're so happy now." I just want to say that um, I think that's one of the best feelings that I've had like in my life is like I'm just like talking with like an old friend or like family, and then I think I'm just being myself, but then they say like, "Oh, like wow, like you're much different now. I'm happy to see you like this." I'm like, "Oh." And
Mhm.
then because it makes you think that like wow, like if they're receiving me like this, how low must I have been um before, like how moody and um I don't know how different was I that now like they're actually pointing it out like, oh wow, you're better now. And I'm like, oh man, okay, thank you. But so
Yeah. Um, the engine analogy, the car analogy that you brought up, Tony, is actually really spot on because coming to our life, like we're like cars. Like sometimes we need some oil change, we need some tires change. Sometimes we need to reverse. Sometimes you have to be put in park. But and we can't always be in always that gas mode. Like we always have to take a pause.
I like that. The engine analogy does help me form my own definition now that I think about it.
Cool.
Yeah, actually, the first thing that came to mind was this Ilocano term. Like whenever I hear my mom say it, whenever like she feels like something is weighing heavy on her heart and she starts to feel like anxiety about it, like masakit na ako. Like, you know, like my heart and my head don't feel well about this. And I think that's how I conceptualize like mental health, like maintenance in the holistic sense. That, like not only does your body and the physical like have to feel well, but like your own spirit like has to feel.
Kind of staying within this kind of topic, but shifting it a little bit to our own Filipino culture. What values did we all grow up, and how does it shape to your understanding of?
I'm not gonna say who told me this, but um, someone very close to me said uh, depression is a white people's sickness,
Mhm.
you know, because and then I thought about like what they were saying, like where they came from, and like they had to just like work hard and like they didn't have time to be sad about it. They just had to um, go through with it and to be able to support their family or just mope around in their terms. Um, so uh, even like the whole therapy thing, like lying down and the person like writes down stuff. Like I just saw it in movies, you know, like in Freaky Friday. Uh, but yeah, I never really understood like the power uh, that um like I guess therapy or just even discussing mental health can have on a person. So before it was just you know tough it out. Um you know, and I think there is value in that where it's like don't be defeated. Don't just act defeated and be like, oh, I can't do anything. Like if you know that there's a job that has to be done, do your best to do it. But I think the other side of that coin is like you have to know your limits and like be okay asking for help or like understand that like you know you can't do everything by yourself and there's no shame in asking for help. So learned growing up in the Philippines. So
Yeah, kind of similar to that, except no one in my family ever actually like said any of those things to me. It was more so of I learned by example. Like my mom and my grandparents, like none of them ever really complained about anything, and they had it really hard when they first came here, and that was all that they would just do is just keep working hard to survive. And no one actually, like I said the words to me of like, you need to tough it out. But by watching them, that's just kind of how I always figured I had to be. And then, but just on the topic of like mental health at all was just never really something we even spoke about.
Yeah, I don't think mental health was something that we explicitly talked about either in my family. Similar to what Tony was saying, like it was a white man's disease. Like you would have to be able to afford to like think about your mental health in a way. And I'm the eldest daughter in a family of also immigrants. So a lot of what I learned about mental health and the values that I grew up with were informed by the fact that like I was like, how do I repay like my family for the sacrifices that they made to get me here? And as like the eldest like daughter in my family, I felt like I needed to take on a lot of responsibility. So that was like a value that really informed, I guess, like how I needed to hold myself accountable. And yeah, maybe I couldn't afford like to think about my mental health because I needed to repay that debt back um in a way. But I guess in learning about responsibility through and through, it's also holding myself accountable to what I can give myself. And sometimes that might be space for mental health. So my AirPods fell out. But yeah, no, I totally think that it's similar to that experience that we never really talked about it, and I kind of just like implied it from my family.
you bring up something I didn't think about also is, yeah, I'm also the eldest daughter. And it's like, you don't even think about it. You just know like there are things that I need to do and there are responsibilities that I now have. And you kind of just take it on. And also like not, this could just be me, but I don't know if you relate to this too, but I also, because of like taking on that responsibility, almost never wanted to look weak or like show if I couldn't handle it. And it was like I just needed to be strong for everybody else.
I
I
feel
have
you.
the I have the opposite experience where I am the oldest. It's only me and my sister,
Mhm.
siblings, but I recently learned maybe like 4 or 5 years ago that she felt that she shouldn't or couldn't express her own sadness and depression in the family because I was already so vocal about it.
Oh,
I was already like the brat and like angsty and just so sad all the time and I guess it was around the same point where like she's one of the people telling me that like oh I'm better now or like she sees me that like I'm doing better now. That's when she was telling me that like oh yeah like back then I felt like I couldn't or I shouldn't just add to the stress of our family.
yeah. Mhm.
So that also made me feel really bad because like I was just so selfish like with my own problems that I didn't even see that like or how it could be affecting my sister. And that's my sister telling me how much more is it affecting my parents that like I'm complaining to or about. So with a lot of I guess self-reflection comes or with me at least became like shame and regret, but also just understanding that like okay, well, I can't do anything about that now, so just try and be the best I can moving forward, and just try not to repeat the same things that the same actions and behaviors and things that I said. Just be cool, you know. So yeah,
And I
sorry,
feel like
sister. Sorry,
you shouldn't
Lara.
let that like hold you back either. Because I mean, I feel like because that is how I felt. I felt like I didn't want to stress out my family because of the responsibilities I had. So it's like I'm not going to add to all the things that we're already dealing with. But I don't know if like anybody could have said anything to me to not take that on. It was just kind of something that we feel.
You both bring up a really good point, and I think this is where a lot of Filipinos might tend to internalize a lot of our problems because they don't want to cause problems for others and even in their families. So what you described, Tony, and that's why especially when it comes to our own family, we don't like to say much because when we do, it's like causing another, I guess, this burden. And if you are all familiar of this value called utang na loob, which is like the feeling of indebtedness to others, this is one of the values that can have a contribution to like SI, trigger warning, suicidal ideation. And it's because of this inherent feeling of like, I did this for you, you kind of owe me, kind of this feeling. And if that's your purpose and if you can't pay them back, then what does that value does to your life? So it's this constant to really understand like and especially in the Filipino culture, family, we're super super close. So just just setting the or uh, just being able to like share your experience, and they may not kind of take it how you want to be perceived, that can be difficult and can create like a something you never expected to be. Or kind of like adding more into it is like maybe it kind of because everyone here, you are all the eldest child. I'm like I'm the opposite. I'm the youngest, so being in the room with all the eldest children is different feeling. Um, so being the eldest child in the family, what certain expectations did you guys have personally that you think maybe is one of the reasons that maybe is I don't know. I kind of wanted to hear your perspective, like being the eldest children. Like, what is the biggest thing you had to carry in your life?
We have to be the example,
Yeah.
and then in our heads we're the favorite. But we also know that because we've had our own time to like I guess shine because we've had time before the other was born, and then now we have to share the attention. I don't know, I just think you have to be the one to look out for your younger siblings.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think like taking care of the family, even at a young age, was just kind of something that you feel. And I'm not
Mm.
sure why, but it just happens.
You become the
Yeah.
second parent.
Yes. I think I had to do everybody's homework is how I see it. Like I would help my brother with his math homework respectively, and then my parents would come home and they would need help with the computer. My grandparents would need help understanding a letter they got in the mail about their immigration status. And as an 8-year-old, like I had to like translate that for them. So I feel like um one of the heavier things that feels light in the moment, but then you realize like how much it takes a toll is like I had to do everybody's like homework.
Yeah, I hear that a lot too from like children of immigrants because we bridge the gap, between what they are trying to do and what we are here doing. And then sometimes it's like with languages, sometimes it's like with trying to understand the culture we're in here, but we're kind of the ones to look to bridge the gap.
What's your expectation being the bunso, being the youngest?
Oh, uh, I think being the youngest, I didn't have any expectation growing up. I think for me, it's it's kind of like trying to, because I feel like it differs with like the eldest, where like the bunso, you're technically the favorite child, so you get all the attention last. And if you do anything like in trouble, like it doesn't count because it's your sisters, like they're not teaching you what they were taught of, so you kind of have the leeway or the free pass
Hmm.
as a bunso. So, but at the same time, there is this cons of like being the bunso. You see your siblings, you see your eldest siblings, like you see how hard they work, and you're just realizing that they went through all this, and you having to kind of like set a different path for yourself. Like if they all went to nursing, you feel like you have to go to that route too. Or if they went a certain career path, like you have to follow, but you also have to have this able to distinguish that you can set a different path for yourself, especially as a bunso. But kind of turning back the tables to the eldest, what is the expectation you have for your bunso, your youngest siblings?
I don't know. Now that I'm in a better place, I try to spoil her. But then when she gets too cocky, then I fight her again. But then overall, I think the general vibe is just we're friends now. Like friends, like real friends.
I feel that. My brother and I are also really close
Mm.
now that we're older, but when we were younger, we would tussle really
Mm.
bad. I will admit I was not always the best sister. And so I feel like I try to make up for that now. And so my expectation for my brother, I guess, really is like, do what makes you happy. I kind of took the brunt of what are make use of that. Like, go do what makes you happy. And yes, I do spoil my brother. Um, I recently found out I've been paying for my brother's gym membership for like a year. So
Wow.
yeah, I think just be happy.
Yeah, I don't feel like I've ever had any expectations for him. I only have one younger brother, but then hearing you mention that actually, like, yeah, I just want him to like live his life and be happy. And I guess there was always a part of me that was like, there was a little bit that resented that, like, how much more fell on me than him. But then it's also kind of like, well, if you can go live your life and do what you want, then go do that. You should.
I guess one thing that I would like to add on, and like just being able to hear the eldest kind of like you guys talk about your bunso, your youngest. Um, I think one thing that I would like to kind of add to it is being the eldest. Are you like, and you mentioned this, Drea, like you're being the eldest, you bridge the gap between your parents and your bunso. Has there ever been moments where your bunso tried to protect you?
I don't know if it was more so protect, but like there was this when we were kids, my mom always used to tell me that whenever they would take us separately to the store, like if he would go with her or if I would go with her by ourselves without the other one, she would tell me like, oh, every time I take your brother, he always asks me if we can get something for you, but you never ask if you can get something for him. So I don't know if like I can't think of any examples for protection, but he was always like trying to show care.
I relate to that. Like when my parents go to McDonald's and I'm just like at home, I guess. And they come home, oh look, Lara got this for you. It's like, oh, or Lara, remember to get this for you.
I think food is a love language. My brother does that also, but the kicker is that it's when I'm like, oh, go get a drink for yourself. I give him my card, and then he's like, oh, I got something for you too, but it was on my card.
The thought that counts.
Yeah, it's the thought. I really cherish it.
It's nice being able to hear this because I feel like it's a really great way to kind of like think about the moments that you have with your siblings. And it's a way to like, especially you three. I did not plan this. I did not know you guys were all the eldest. But I did see that two of you are first generations. But I think one of the biggest thing that I kind of took from this is a lot of the elder siblings, older siblings, like there's a lot of pressure within you guys, but you also have a lot to offer to the youngest, to the baby, to the bunso. And part of it is making sure that they're well protected and that they don't go through the same experience as you did when you were growing up. So kind of transitioning along to that question is, how do you set your boundaries with taking care of yourself and your family?
I've had a really tough time with the word boundaries recently. In like the last year, maybe. Maybe as soon as I started a full-time job. Um, but there was always two things growing up that I thought were for white people: boundaries and frozen yogurt. Um, I think it was like a classes thing, like, I just wasn't in that socioeconomic class. But anyways,
Mm.
boundaries. I thought like it wasn't in our values as Filipinos, is like how I felt. Like, like we needed to be family oriented. Like, why would I want to put up walls? Was how I thought about it. And yeah, I think I struggle with it to this day, but I'm learning with what boundaries actually mean, and how I set those boundaries is, I think, by a guiding principle of like, I keep space so that we can keep a relationship. Um, because I want to learn how to accept, I guess, myself for who I am without my family like speaking over who I am, but also knowing that like they're advocating for me and I'm advocating for them too. So I want to see both of us thrive. And so I keep that space so we can keep a relationship. So if it's as simple as like telling my brother, don't call me during work hours, or telling my mom, I don't want to hear about like, what's going on at work and the stress that you're going through, as much as like I also want to hear about the good in your life. Setting boundaries like that so we can keep a relationship.
I'm definitely still struggling with that as well. I feel like for me, saying no is just something I'm still trying to practice. And it still like feels bad in the moment. Like I still feel guilty about it. But then I'm trying to like tell myself how much better it is for myself. Like I don't need to give every piece of myself all the time, and that it's okay for me to say no when I don't want to do something or if I'm not comfortable. And I think that's the biggest thing is when I'm not, well, actually, I was going to say the biggest thing is when I'm not comfortable, but I think the biggest thing is when I just don't want to, because that's when I feel the most guilty. So I'm like, oh, I don't really have a reason not to do this, or in my head, what I think is not a good reason, but I just don't want to do it. And I need to learn that that's okay. And I'm trying to do that more.
I guess for me, I've been lucky because my family. Uh, I'm not uncomfortable saying no. Um, and I don't think anyone is. And um, my family, I think, including like uncles and aunts and grandparents, both sides of my family, both both sides of my parents, they're just they very gracious and very kind and loving, and I just the bond that everyone has. It's like everything is done out of love and respect, and it's never out of fear or out of debt or like utang sa loob. Like it's and what amazes me really is that growing up and just like this is how it is. This is how families are. This is normal. Like at least that's how I grew up thinking. So when I heard about other people and like their families, it was like a big shock. I was like, wow, like I really am fortunate that my like almost everyone in my family is open to communication and is just like loves by doing and giving and caring, and I think I just uh I don't think I maybe not taken for granted, but just not realizing um how fortunate, how lucky I am to have been raised in that environment. And even then I still turned out to be like a sad boy, uh an angsty kid. So I think if I realized the situation more wholly back then, maybe I could have acted better. So yeah.
No, and one thing I've also realized is, and I'll try to answer the question as well, because I think what everyone said, I feel like we could all relate to. Like I think for me, like for boundaries, it's also something I've been learning, still still learning how to grasp, but I think it's the saying no. Especially if you are someone who's a recovering people pleaser and you just want to feel included, it's so hard to say no to things. And I think that's the number one, is learning to just say that. And I think you put it in a good way, Drea, is um, don't spread yourself too thin. I think that's the number one thing I've been learning, and constantly is learning that you don't always have to give a piece of yourself to every single one. No one deserves to know your story. There's only certain people that deserves to know it. Um, I think that's the number one thing. And realizing that there are four, one, two, three. There's three girls here, only one guy. I don't want to call you out on it because you're the only guy here. But being a man, especially in this society, do you guys? It's not really seen in the media that that for men to be okay to talk about their feelings. It's still pretty much a taboo. And I wanted to kind of like open the open the call to you, Tony. Like, what do you think about that, especially as a man of color, especially?
Thought of myself as a man of color or or as a man in the first place, because I guess I still consider myself like a boy, like a dude. Like I mean I'm in my late 20s, but like I just have this idea about like of a man, you know. Um, but definitely uh I've been told before, like don't be a slur. Um, when I'm expressing like my feelings and stuff. And I was like, okay, guess that makes sense. And then I grew up, and then I realized that like I think I stopped like I never really um cared too much about like being the male part, because once I figured out that um I have the power to be, or we all have the innate power to be true to ourselves and honest, um then I just like I didn't care. It's not something I think about, even being a guy who has mental health, um who's even just thinking about or talking about mental health. I just think that every single person um has their problems. So I don't know. Let me go back to your main question, which is what's it like being a guy speaking out about mental health? I think I'm lucky that uh, the time where I am, the time where I am, like accepting myself and understanding myself and like trying to learn more about mental health, the whole environment, um, I think is just more accepting and tolerant and less be a man, be a guy, punch a wall, kick a puppy, feel better. Um, so I don't know, it's not something I've thought about too often, so or too much. But thank you for letting me be one of the girly pops today.
And I open these questions to everyone else, like especially having a guy figure in your life, especially in a Filipino household, Filipino community, having a guy, has there any guy figure in your life that ever expressed and advocated mental health?
I don't know if he'd want me to like make it known I'm talking about him, so I'm just going to be vague and say there is someone uh, that I was surprised to see like how much of a change he made in just like his emotional maturity and the way he handles things. And to me, it seemed like that definitely gave him more power in who he is. And like that's always really good to see, especially when you have a good grasp on that. Especially since I feel like even though we are now like in a time that is more accepting, all of a sudden there's all these like podcasts and YouTube shows of these guys who are trying to say like, no, that's not how you should be, and they're trying to like reinforce this like toxic masculine way to be, and that that's the right way, and that we need to stop straying away from that. It's it's nice to see that there are a lot of people in my life who don't believe that, especially men, and that they can like embrace that part of themselves and know that it's okay.
I think my dad hasn't really talked about mental health verbatim, like said the word mental health, but um he surprisingly is the person like in our family who kind of reels everybody back in. When I'm not playing mediator, he is, and it's usually because like he's reeling everybody back in, telling folks, you have to take care of yourself first, like do what is best, that sits with your spirit the best. So
I think feeling everything back in, Drea, you bring up a good point about like breaking that toxic masculinity. Um, and especially in a society that we live in today where there's every single you can express who you are is really important. Um, and I just want to say thank you, Tony, for being here because being able to hear your perspective, especially because we don't often get to hear guys' perspective when it comes to mental health, when it comes to wellness, because half of the time, and what I've noticed is like um when I hear mental health in men, all I hear is like either drinking or anything in different ways, but I never hear it in like let's talk story and like let's just sit down. Um Often for many men, it may be different for certain situation, but and I think we should that's something that need to continue to change is how do we openly invite um our our guy friends, our guy, every, how to invite men in our life to talk about openly their feelings, to make sure that they're also seen. Because they're also one who I feel like are silently struggling because half of the time it's always the female being able to express, but not men.
Yeah, happy to well, I just it's also hard because I don't want to come off as like mansplaining, which is a term that I learned through my fiance and my girlfriend. Um, yeah, so as long as what I'm saying is informative or valuable to our conversation, thanks for having me. So
To transition on is so how do we bring this conversation of mental health in our community and our friend circles?
guy's perspective, I guess. Um, I I guess two things. I'll say them really quick. One is for I think there just has to be more examples that guys can look up to that talk about mental health. Um, you know, and I've seen uh like since I was in high school and through college, like seeing like news articles about like, oh, a comedian blah blah or sports star blah blah speaks out on mental health and depression. And then I'm like, whoa, like, that's cool. I'm sad too. Like they can be sad and they're like successful. And so I think the more people the more it is made known that anyone and everyone needs the mental health in check, then I think it it helps people be like, okay, like I can come forward. It's like I'm not weak. It's like it's just something that I have to understand. Um, yeah. I forgot what I was the second thing. Oh, the second thing is just keep talking about mental health. For the Filipino JCs of Honolulu, we had a mental health event in May that Chachi helped me set up, where we talked about how Filipino food can link can help you link back to your culture, can help Filipinos link back to their culture and like understand like where they come from and why these ingredients, how different regions use different techniques, and even just tasting those foods, it'll give you some sort of connection and a start to understanding, appreciating your culture. Because a lot of Filipinos here in Hawaii um, either sometimes they don't consider themselves Filipinos, they disqualify themselves as Filipinos because they don't know enough. But we're here, we're our message is like we're trying to let them know that hey, like it's still in your blood, it's still your culture. You don't have to make it your whole personality, but at least just check it out and try and understand where you came from. So yeah, I think just having like events or discussions like even today's podcast where we talk about mental health, I think as long as you just keep talking about it, it'll eventually spread to more people and more people can get well or at least start.
I feel like coming at it from a lighter perspective helps a lot too. Like I know
Mm,
sometimes it's not always something that I'll talk to about like with my friends, but if I come at it from like a just a lighter perspective, like, oh, how are you doing today? But then being like, are you answering truthfully though, or are you just saying you're okay just to say you're okay? Just like little ways of approaching it rather than like deep diving into things because sometimes people just aren't ready for a whole deep dive and like giving at least like giving that space and like letting them know you're available, I think will help start more of a conversation within your own circles.
Yeah, I think I'm along the same lines of like making space for what the truthful answer might be if like you kind of sense the vibes are off, like listening to that intuitively. I think a big part of starting the conversation is also knowing that it requires vulnerability on your own end. And I think that's something that I learned that when I opened up first about like maybe what I'm going through, maybe in like a lighter fashion, than like instead of going into like the 10 reasons why I feel like anxiety today, like I just kind of say like I'm not feeling that great, and that kind of gets the conversation going. So recognizing the vulnerability first and foremost, and then maybe practicing that vulnerability myself.
I think what you all brought up is a really good point, especially because um talking about mental health is never easy, especially because it's something that can kind of get someone caught off guard when they're not when there's already so many things happening in the world. But I think like what everyone like here mentioned, like being able to subtly like check in. I'm gonna bring back the car analogy again because that was a really good one. Like we're all different cars, different car types. You can choose what kind of car you are, but we all have the same mechanics inside. We all need to be maintained. We all need to have our oils checked. We need to have our gas. We need to be able to slow down. And sometimes, as an engine, as a car, we can get wrecked. Um, but at the end of the day, being able to have like that pit crew. Now I'm thinking of cars from Pixar. We all need to have that pit that pit
Ciao.
crew to kind of get us all into shape. Um, so there's that. Um, Last but not least, what is your best practices of giving yourself self-love, self-care, and managing symptoms of anxiety?
Meditation has made like the biggest change in my life. And it's like it's so simple that I can turn to it whenever I need it, if it's a busy day, if I'm at work. So that's like for me that has been the biggest change.
I don't know. I uh just do or just pick one of my hobbies and then just try to distract myself with it, and then eventually I come out feeling better. Still trying to figure it out, because there are also times where I'm like, oh, I don't even want to do that. Like the thing that makes me happy, like I'll just lie down and mope. So I think I'm still trying to figure out what works best for me. And right now I'm just doing hobbies.
I obviously spiral in thought easy because when you asked this question, I was like, okay, let me pull from my bank of like practices that I do whenever I start to spiral. And I started spiraling in that. I've had the privilege of like having access to therapy. So a lot of what I do to practice self-care, especially when it comes to my anxiety, is like pulling from like these exercises that my therapist told me about. So like the 10-10-10 rule, like if I'm anxious about something, is it going to matter in 10 minutes, in 10 days, 10 weeks, 10 years? Helping me to like scale back and look at the bigger picture. Also do like practice to help like any unhelpful thoughts. Like I've been going through a lot of self-doubt recently. And so when I feel that self-doubt, like I kind of step back and I'm like, okay, where is this thought coming from? Okay, what evidence do I have that actually supports it? Because I'm also a very like I need to think things through. But then also what goes against it, you know? And then I think gratitude is like another practice that I've been trying to work on. I always used to think like, of course I'm grateful for the life that I have. Like I have it so good. But it's so easy to forget like, you know, everything that does go on in life when you feel like you're just being tussled around with like how life happens. So taking a step back to be grateful for what is going right when things are going wrong, even when it feels like you can't find anything going right. You can. An example that I have is at work the other week. I went through this whole sleuth of trying to order food for an event that we were hosting, and I needed to find gluten-free options. I had already placed the order. The day of the event comes, and I had everything figured out, or at least I thought, and they only delivered the gluten-free options and not the rest of the order. But at least the gluten-free options were delivered, is like how I kind of spun the situation. So gratitude, even in the smallest ways, I feel like can help that self-care that you need. So
You have anything that you do, Chachi?
Oh, thank you for asking. For me, what I've learned to do is, I like to take photos. I've been getting into that habit of taking photos again and trying to vlog, just trying to document my life again. Like I follow this YouTuber called Life with Riza. One thing that I got from her is just romanticizing your life and put yourself as a main character energy. So just documenting every aspect of my life. And I don't even have to post it, but just watching it over and over again and trying to just live life and live freely at it. I think that's been helping go at its pace. Um, and then I have kind of questions for each and every one of you. With Tony, what is your hobbies and passion?
I like uh storytelling through the medium of making videos. So I know you're talking about the life of Riza. Very, very aesthetically pleasing and relaxing videos. Also like video games and surfing, but I haven't surfed in a while, so I'm lazy. I also like taking pictures, but the main thing is videos. I just finished a video today, earlier, actually, before this thing, and it's like 40 seconds.
And then for Ashley and Drea, kind of guys had similar kind of answers a little bit. Where is your favorite place to ground yourself, especially when you're doing meditations?
I mean, my favorite place is outside. Like if I can be under, like if I can have the sun on my face, or if I could see the moon, like that's not always super accessible, especially if you're just stressed in the moment and need to meditate. But those are my favorite places.
Yeah, I also like being outside. Um, I like going to the beach. I'm grateful that I live close enough to the beach here. And like I kind of just go sometimes and I like to smell like the water. Um, but I think yeah, it's not the most convenient. And I guess I like to journal my thoughts. So anywhere with my notebook is really good for me.
I want to ask, are you like loyal to like a specific brand of journal or notebook?
No, but I'm loyal
Okay,
to my G2 pen, point five.
cool.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
I'm always looking for good pens.
Okay. Well, that's the end of our talk story. And it was really grand to have a conversation with each and every one. Even with like this 5 questions, there's so many to ask, so many to add, and so many people that so many of your experiences that you guys shared. Um, Now I kind of wanted to end this talk story with a little bit of a grounding meditation kind of activity. Um, I'll pause it a little bit just to close everything. I wanted to kind of keep that kind of sacred, intentional, because that's something for us. But coming back, I know we did a grounding meditation off camera. I kind of wanted to kind of do this reassurance that wherever you're going in life, this is not the end of this connection. You just added three wonderful kapwatids to your circle. Um, and each time that you go through your life, you have a purpose. You have a purpose to inspire others through your story and to your life. Um, and I wanted to kind of give space if you have any projects that you're currently working on or anything that you're doing that you want to be supported, or you want to just share a feedback or anything to with anyone, like an affirmation.
I'd like to use this time to talk about, or just briefly, talk about the Filipino JCs of Honolulu, where two of our mission comes in two parts, which is to perpetuate the local Filipino heritage and to provide young active citizens uh, opportunities to create positive change. And so we've had already a couple mental health awareness events this year, and I'm sure we'll have more in the years to come. And if you want to check us out and see more about what we do, we are on Instagram at Filipino JCs of Honolulu. That's basically where we post like what we've done, what we're doing, what we're planning, and just kind of what we're.
I have another podcast called Unpopular Passion. I'm also writing for a new Filipino magazine that just came out called Kapwa Magazine. So you can follow that on Instagram. We only have one issue out so far. It's brand new. And I also have music out. If you look up Drea Sandoval on Spotify, YouTube, whatever, I have one single. It's out now. You can hear that.
I don't have anything that I'm personally working on right now that I can talk about. But I have been trying to discern if I wanted to start creating in a bigger capacity. And I guess like an affirmation for this space is that, oh, I think one quote that comes to me really clearly is just like comparison is the thief of joy. And I think that has been something that's resounding in my head, because I haven't really taken time to be with like communities like this. And so um, I've been feeling really empowered by y'all and got me thinking about how to create again in community.
I hope I get to see what you guys create. I look forward to that.
I was like trying to think of an affirmation that I use all the time, and I couldn't remember it, but I just remembered it. But it was everything is working out exactly the way it should, because sometimes you might think something is bad in the moment, doesn't always mean it is. So just try to see everything in the best way possible.
Okay, for affirmations too, I think I would also have to copy compassion is the thief of joy, or comparison is the thief of joy. Because my fiance was playing, because I just said that recently. My fiance was playing Roblox the other night, and she saw someone else's Roblox house that was nicer than hers, even though she spent all this time making her Roblox house. And all I said was comparison is a thief of joy. And she said, "You're right," and that was the end. That was the end of the conversation. But yeah, it's something I believe too.
I just want to say again, thank you for this great comeback episode. I'm really grateful for every single one of y'all being able to like have this deep conversation and to just be in community with everyone again is something very needed, especially with what's going on with everything. I think it's really being able to that I'm always going to bring back this car analogy, but always remember to check your car engine at all times. Check yourself, check the people that you're with, and making sure that um if they are also the right people in your life. One of the biggest things. But without further said and do, thank you so much for being a part of this, and I look forward to see what you all will create in the near future.